All right, let's see what we're doing here. Okay, this sketch, which is already halfway done, is of Perseus and Andromeda. And of course, that's Greek mythology. I find these to be pretty difficult drawings to do. I think in a way, I'm just going to ink this now that I've done all the pencil work, because I'll be honest with you, as a video, I was a little bit unsure how long it was going to take me to do this. I used a model, and I'll show that to you. There's the model that I used for this, which appears to have been famous red figure pottery of ancient Greek, repeated twice. Vases have been found in the 2nd century BC, right under the end of the 1st century BC. Okay, I don't even use that term anymore, BC. And I find the anatomy is just really accurate, and the rhythm of the drawings, even when there's compromises in the anatomy, you know, it's not like it's not photographic anatomy. It's actually, to my mind, better than that. And there's no halftones, there's no shading in the drawing, so it makes it very much like a Japanese work of art. But hitting essentially the contours is the whole key to getting the drawing correct. And of course, I didn't have to imagineer this. I'm just drawing what I see. And that's always going to land you a little bit better off when it comes time to being accurate with what you're doing. Of course, that's not to say you can't build up a good vocabulary for doing this type of work, because you can. And I see plenty of people do that. I find that drawing the figure to be challenging, and I don't like to use essentially tracing. I mean, a lot of people will just pop the images up on a tablet or whatever they do, or wherever they draw, and then they can just trace the image off. You know, I mean, Norman Rockwell worked that way, and countless comic artists and countless artists that just you know, do graphic novels, or they are just doing, you know, Art Nouveau and things like that. They utilize that, and I guess there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, certainly you're going to get a very accurate rendition of your subject, without a doubt. I mean, I guess it's a lot like the Renaissance artists using camera obscura, which allowed them to get proportion correct, because proportion really becomes the major difficulty. You can have all the nice technique and shading and all the other stuff, and building very exciting forms, and that would make for a very good drawing, or it does make for a very good drawing, but the proportions can still be way off, provided you're not willfully making them off on purpose for emphasis and stuff like that. And a lot of artists have done that. I mean, Lucian Freud would purposefully distort, you know, various things. Not a lot, just scads of artists have done that to add expressive value to what it is they were doing. The trick with this, and I got to tell you, I don't consider myself particularly all that good at it, is doing these things, doing the lines with a certain confidence and quickness. And I struggle with that a little bit because I'm not exactly sure where everything's going. So I have a tendency to slow it down a little bit. And the other thing I notice on the urn is that the artist, and I'm assuming this is authentic and not some artist's rendition of this, but is that the artist used a brush, and with that brush, the artist was capable of varying the line width, which I'm not doing with this, that's for sure. And 1, 2, 3, 4, make sure we don't come up with a 6-fingered finger or hand. Like the guy who used to pitch for the Cubs and the Dolphins, I forgot his name now. He had 12 fingers. He had 6 fingers on either hand. Didn't really affect his pitch that much. I mean, he was a relief pitcher, if I'm not mistaken. I've forgotten his name. But let's bring that back up a little bit so I can see it. I like this because I think these type of images could lend themselves quite a bit to a graphic novel, depending on what thematic story you want to wind and wrap around this. I mean, you could just, if you wanted it to be something from the past or ancient, you could easily pick any period in history, to do it. I mean, I was thinking of attempting this with either this style and then setting a thematic graphic novel based around the Mediterranean, because I have Mediterranean ancestry in me. But then I was also thinking, and I'm going to try it next, is imitating the artwork of people like Peter Bruegel and Hieronymus Bosch and the Van Eyck brothers, because they definitely didn't use camera obscura, but they had a very unique style, and the drawings are extremely busy, and I love them. I just think they're terrific. And I don't know what to do. I gave this guy a Roman nose. He's supposed to be a Greek. And I have, almost to a point where I need to give him a beard. Well, it's okay. We're not going to do that. I have ancestry that way too. So, I mean, I have Anglo ancestry. I mean, not that your ancestry has anything that really is that important, but it kind of, for me, it perks my interest in, the subject, and would make it interesting for me. So in that respect, I was thinking of Central European Celtic tribes or clans, stuff like that, would be an interesting thematic thing. And you drew your pictures like Bruegel or the artists I mentioned, Bosch and Van Eyck and all the artists from that era. Actually, we're talking about a couple of eras there. But I have to move around because I don't want to. They say when you make these videos, I don't know how much my head's getting in the video, I hope not too much. But they say when you make these videos, don't move the drawing pad. Okay, I'm not going to do that. So what I have to do is, and you know what, I'm going to look at it, make sure I get everything in. Yeah, pretty close. I think I need to bring that down a little bit so you can see the headgear. Those old Greek helmets and Roman helmets are so cool. when I was a kid, I just thought that I had well, I think it was actually a Prince Valiant um, little plastic night set that he'd wear, and he had like a plastic armor plate. And he had a helmet with a visor that came down, and it had a plume to it, which was definitely cool. I had like a rubber sword, which was also very cool. And I just doted on that outfit. I just thought it was cool. You could put on a cape and go around, you'd be Prince Valiant for a day. And I always liked the romanticism of the Arthurian period, the Knights of the Round Table, and Sir Lancelot and all the other stuff. And of course the comic books, Prince Valiant, were always a lot of fun. Did a lot of book reports based on those comic books because I didn't want to read the novels themselves in school. I was lazy. And so I'd go get the comic books, and I think that's a word. But in the long run, if you're going to ever learn anything, then you got to go later on in your life and go back and pick all that stuff up, which I did do. But in school, I was very much a goof off, as I guess a lot of people are. This guy looks like he's a member of the Philadelphia Eagles. Excuse me, with those winged, with that winged helmet like that. It's pretty bizarre. It kind of looks Norse, a little bit with all that kind of stuff, with the big horns or the wings or something like that on the helmet. And I'm not very well up on Greek mythology. In fact, I'd heard of Andromeda and also Perseus, because he's the guy who, I believe, whacked Medusa's head and brought it back, and showed it to people. And the guy who was supposed to kill, I think, Andromeda, or wanted to have her killed because she was claiming to be the most beautiful woman in the world, or some such nonsense like that, was shown the skull of Perseus. Brought the head back and showed it to him. Of course, if you looked at Medusa, you were like, uh-oh. You'd go into a catatonic state or die. Excuse me, hiccups. Those stories are fascinating. But anyway, to get back to graphic novels or comic books and whatever, I just feel like the whole genre is just dominated by cinematic lighting and muscle-bound people. This guy's pretty strong right here, but I mean, I don't know. It's just, I look at these things and it's all I ever see are just, great big muscle-bound guys, and there's nothing wrong with being fit. And the panels look like they were stills taken from a movie. I mean, they have that type of angle taken to them that's very cinematic. They have that same type of, lighting that creates very dramatic, dark black shadows, which are fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But what happens is that when all of them look that way, you begin to get tired of it. At least I do. And so maybe as an alternative to that, something along this lines. Or the other one I was talking about with the Germanic sort of and Dutch sort of way of depicting characters would be interesting. I mean, I'll tell you what, I think there's one by, you know what, I think it's Broidel, called The Hunt, or The Winter Hunt, A Hunt in Winter, or something like that. Oh man, it's just a fabulous painting. These guys are returning to this village, and they have their dogs with them and sticks, and I guess, I don't know what they're hunting, deer maybe, I don't, my recollection is I don't think they did very well, because I don't believe they're carrying any animals back on them, but you just have a great view of the town or the village that they live in the background as they move up, and the coloration of the piece is such that you get a real feeling of winter. It's just, I mean, really subtle, and the lake they're coming up on, which is, you know, central to the village, is frozen, and you just, I mean, and they're traipsing through the snow, and it's just a awesome painting. It's one of my favorites. And I'm pretty sure it's Broidel that did that one too. Now Bosch, his stuff is really, really strange, as everybody knows. And I think everybody kind of likes him for that very reason. You know, the Garden of Earthly Delights, I think it's called, is a very interesting painting. I remember watching a made-for-TV Netflix series, which is, about curling does, which put the neck down like that, called Persons of Interest, and it was pretty good. It was all about dueling artificial intelligence and one trying to overtake the other, and of course it has its fanciful side to it and everything. But what's interesting to me is, number one, they would shoot on location, and they shot, number one, right in the neighborhood where my oldest daughter used to live in New York. And you could see all the places from her neighborhood in there. And she would say one day she was coming back to her home, she would see the crews out on the street felling. And the series is really good. But the other setting for it was Washington, D.C., which is where I was born, and I don't live too far away from there. And I recognized so many of the places. And they had one scene where there's this discussion, and the guys are in the National Gallery of Art. And they're on the ground floor. I recognize where they are in the building. In fact, I know exactly where they are in the building. And they're standing in front of Hieronymus Bosch's paintings, The Garden of Earthly Delights. And that painting does not hang in the National Gallery of Art, nor has it ever been on tour here at the National Gallery of Art. And I'm going, whoa, what'd they do here? You know, and why'd they put that in here? You know, what was the purpose of putting it in? So they obviously used, what do they call it, blue screen, so that they could, include it in the storyline while they had this discussion. But I mean, I thought it was really strange because although there's a painting there in that space, but I'll be honest with you, they switch out paintings there quite often, so I forget which one it is, but it's one of the, if I'm not mistaken, it's one of the early American painters, you know, like Gilbert Stuart or something like that. And I just, I said, wow, I wonder why they, with all the different artwork here in this gallery, why did they bother to pick something from, you know, that hangs in the European gallery? But they did. And, so strange. So contouring this out is not too difficult because I've already done all the work drawing it and doing the, I have to make lots of corrections. I don't get it right the first time, that's all there is to it. And I have to constantly readjust. So that's why I usually work things. I think a lot of artists do it. I work things out beforehand in pencil, and that way I can get things close enough to my satisfaction to say, okay, now I can go ahead and get the pen and go to it. I might try these with brush. I'm not real good with brush, but might be good because I tell you, varying the line width can add a lot of pizzazz to the picture. I mean, I look at what I've drawn, I look at what's here, and of course that's the original is much nicer. Not to downplay mine. I think mine's pretty decent too, but it just it adds another dimension, which might be pretty interesting. You know, they always say, you know, with comic artists, stuff like that, do your inking with a brush and blah blah blah. You know, don't use a pen. But, I imagine a lot of artists just go ahead and use the pen anyway. Of course, they have pens that will that are brush-like anyway. I've got a couple, but they're pretty. They don't work like you think they would. I mean, they're good for covering a large area of one color or tone, usually black in this case, or maybe a gray tone or something like that. Maybe with a little bit more expertise, that wouldn't be such an issue. I tell you, it's hard to keep my head out of this camera because it makes my back hurt sitting here like this. And I want to lean in and get a little bit more over top of the artwork. And I guess at some point I'm going to set up where I have dual cameras, one from the side and then one over top. And I can maybe move the one over top a little bit further back and angle it just a tiny bit. And that would make it, right now it's completely perpendicular to the drawing surface. And I jerry-rigged this thing, and I made it all on my own with just stuff I found here in my place. And it works, you know. I just take my cell phone and stick it up there, you know, put on the camera, put on the video, and shoot it. And a lot of the other ones, if I'm doing time lapse, I wasn't going to do time lapse in this one. I just click the time lapse and let her rip. You know, I try to keep these things to 15 minutes. Tell you what, I forgot this in here. I'm just going to freehand it. And it seems to be long enough. It might be advantageous to make them even shorter than that in the future, because people toggling through the internet, particularly through YouTube, you know, they want to see a lot of different things. They don't want to be stuck with something that's an hour long or even 40 minutes long. You know, they want to be able to. So maybe 5 minutes would be even better. I'll have to think about what I want to edit out and what I want to leave in, which is probably okay. I did that actually with my last time-lapse one that I did of the wood nymph. And, you know, all of a sudden you're at one stage of the drawing and then, bingo, you're looking at it and it's, whoa, he did a lot of stuff that we didn't see. And that's right, I did. Kind of nice not have to do the shading. I like shading. I like doing it. Kind of really adds solidity to form. But there's something really nice about just having a drawing that is essentially contour. And the abstract qualities of what you're looking at start to come through. And the patterns become very, very, very important. And then getting the form, if you're doing it naturalistically, like this drawing has been done, the one I'm using as my model, it's pretty challenging, especially when it comes to doing a lot of noise. I always say with these videos, Watch out for your background noise. Well, I can't control what's going on outside. There's some sirens. I forgot what I was saying. I got lost on the sound of, I think that fire truck's coming in my subdivision. It does sound like it. Not there they go. They're going down the road. Even these things, these vases or vases, or whatever you want to call them, I think were made, were painted with enamel, if I'm not mistaken. Well, I'll take that back. I think maybe they are coming in here. And not only are they coming in here, they're coming right down my street. Turn around, make sure nothing's on fire in my place. So there they go. Okay. Well, a little excitement for your video there. They're going to flip a U and drive right in front of me. No, they didn't. That definitely distracted me from what I was saying. Let's do this right here. So with the enamel, they would, as you can see with the image here, they have, I hope I'm holding it so it's not all reflections to the camera. They have a really dramatic black background, like film noir or something like that. It's just kind of, it adds a lot of pizzazz to the image, I think. And I can do that with this too. I'm not sure the best way to do it though. I mean, the simplest way would be to take an X-Acto knife and cut these figures out, glue it on some black paper, good quality art paper, and do it that way. I've done drawings like that before, and they turned out really well. I know I'm dragging my arm right in front of work, but I want to finish these chains. This was how she was supposed to be killed. She was going to be devoured by some grotesque sea monster or something like that. She was chained to a rock or whatever. And this guy comes along, Perseus, and saves her. And then I think they became lovers, and then they had all kinds of kids and stuff like that. It's like one of those stories that ends happily, which is unusual because most of the mythological stuff doesn't. And I think this guy I just read, in looking him up because I wasn't sure exactly how to pronounce his name, was the great killer of monsters. He slew more up until somebody else. It's like winning a batting title, something like that. He was the best hitter in baseball until so-and-so came along. One thing I'm also fascinated by is the embroidery in the clothing. Like this shape, right? This kind of strange thing, and also these kind of like conch shell looking things. I wonder if they're arbitrary or if they actually mean something. That's something for me to look up, because I don't know the answer to that. This thing here, which looks like a strange game of tic-tac-toe, is another interesting shape. In the double stripes, does that mean anything, or is it just purely decorative? The answers to this, I do not know. Okay, so now let's probably shake my camera a little bit. Sorry about that. But this table is, you can't believe how I made this rig up here for my camera. Hope it doesn't fall down. I gotta be careful right there and make sure that ink is dry. One thing about these pens, the ink dries pretty daggone fast. Okay, there they are. Perseus and Andromeda. Yeah, let me look and see what we're looking at. Through the top here. Yeah, I got his head in and all that good stuff, so you can see. So I'm very pleased, and I will make another one of these here probably tomorrow. So stay in touch, and thanks for watching. Bye.